And we are here with Miss Deesha Philyaw. For everybody who is not aware, we are both Duval girls. This is our hometown, and we want to make you feel welcome. So this is going to be a very laid-back conversation while we talk about the impact that the Secret Lives of Church Ladies has made on a lot of our lives, and some of y'all got your tops blown black blue for things that happened in that book, and we also are going to talk about where she's going now. So we'll go ahead and get started. But first things first, I have a question. This is my own personal question. Since I am a Jacksonville native, I grew up on the north side. For y'all who have not ventured out, I grew up off of Kenmore. Right, I went to Norwood Elementary. That's my hood. That's where I grew up. And my grandfather is he is the founding pastor of Faust Temple on Vaughn Creek. That is my grandfather. For anybody who has been here in Jacksonville, if you've ever been in that church, you've seen my granddaddy, my grandma, my auntie, my mama, all of them was on the organ. So that's what so if you ever saw a little light-skinned girl sitting in the pew, that was me. And as I'm reading this book, I'm like, okay, was that based off anybody in the church that we were here? Because I have some thoughts.
Composites. No one person, but composites.
Composites.
Yes.
I will say, starting off in reading the book, I was a late bloomer in reading the book because I'm very much an auditory person. And back in 2020, I was in the throes of COVID. So I missed everything. So now, reading it now, I'm sitting there, I'm working, and I think I told you personally, I was like, wait, hold on, time out. We got to stop the meeting because I know this book just did not start out with Eula.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did.
And I sat and I was like, okay, pause. I'm going to wait for a second, and then I'm going to go back and start over. Because I heard what I think I heard.
Mm-hmm.
You did.
Yep, I heard that. Come on, let's talk about it. So I realized there were two stories in this book that we had LGBTQI characters. And I really wanted to touch on that because a lot of people within the church community, that's taboo.
Yes. Yes.
And I wanted to touch there because I wanted to find out from your perspective how important that was for you to insert those characters into that book.
I don't think I could, with any kind of confidence, say this is a book about Black women's sex in the Black church and not have Black queer women. Even if those women probably would never call themselves queer, like in Eula. And so that was part of it. So it was just very organic. But specifically, what motivated me was around the time when I was writing these stories, because there was a period of time I didn't know I was writing a collection. I was just writing stories because I was supposed to be writing the novel that I just am finishing now, but I was not writing that novel because I was stuck. So I was writing some stories that later became the collection, Church Ladies. So I'm writing these stories, and before the social media platforms blew up, there were e-lists, y'all remember, where you just emailing people all day on the chain. And I was part of this e-list. It was like a bunch of Black techies and me. I don't remember how I got on there. But one of the guys who's a little older than me, so I'm Gen X, and he said something like, all these girls saying they're bi, it's a trend, it's just a trend, it's just a trend. Back in my day, the girls weren't doing this and the girls weren't doing that. So I just replied to the group and I asked them, I said, how do you know? How do you know? Like, y'all weren't at the sleepovers, y'all weren't at the, And so then he wrote back and he was like, you're right. And I was like, okay, so there's, the church, because if only for the reason of in certain denominations, you can't be alone with men. You don't date, you court. And then when you court, someone has to accompany you. So women spend a lot of time with women. And we're all human. And so even if you don't, because Dr. Black and Rashid yesterday were talking about whether your sexuality is identity and all. And I think for a lot of people, it really isn't. It can be circumstance, which is we're human, our bodies are developing, we have needs, we have desires, or even if you're fully grown, and you're with women all day, something's going to happen, something's going to pop off. And so that's how I first got the idea around Eula and Caroletta. But then also something else that struck me about the church was this idea that I grew up hearing about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. So there's a lot of, doing what the Bible says literally, and just sort of cutting these corners and these sort of contortions and gymnastics. Or when I was a kid, and I think a lot of church kids did this. Well, as long as I don't die before I ask for forgiveness. Anybody else play those little games?
Yeah.
Because we were taught these weird things like, if once you're saved, you can do whatever, but you just got to ask for forgiveness. Now, not everybody bought into thinking and acting like that, but certainly for young people, it was like a get out of hell free card, right? As long as, and so that's why I have a scene in Eula where Eula prays before they have sex and she prays after they. She's just trying to make sure her salvation is intact. So I really hate the kind of contortions that, the church has some of us doing, but those were kind of the ideas that really, that were at the basis of the foundation for Eula.
Now, when we're talking about, that's kind of segue, so let me go put these down because I don't need them now.
Okay. Just talking.
Yeah, we're just talking. So when we're talking about the church, being that I am a Kojic kid, if anybody doesn't know what that is, that's Church of God in Christ. Yeah. So yes, I'm a Kojic kid, and with everybody that may not know, as a Kojic kid, I grew up not seeing my mom, my aunties, not wearing skirts. Well, they would wear skirts all the time. Like, I have an auntie that never wore shorts. She never wore pants. She never drove. She never did all other the things that we as women now see as liberation. We see within the book that these women, with their secrets, they're breaking that status quo with Christianity, being in the church. Could you expound on that within the collection of these stories? Because in each and every one of them, in some small way, it was like, here's a church rule. Let's break that.
Yes. Because we were breaking them anyway.
Yes, we were breaking them anyway.
It was just, what does it look like when we're breaking them? What are the conversations we have with ourselves and with each other? What are we whispering about? Or maybe are you too afraid to whisper about as we are breaking these rules? And what's the consequences and sort of the fallout from that? And so even though we're talking about church ladies, when you mentioned Kojic, it's making me think about my novel, which is coming out in September of next year, The True Confessions of First Lady Freeman. And it is about a megachurch pastor's wife, a first lady who enters a beauty pageant for middle-aged first ladies. And called First Lady USA. It's a satirical novel. And the ladies are doing their orientation, and they're doing some stuff, modeling some clothes and getting some promo stuff ready for the festival, or for the pageant. And they have the past year's First Lady, who is Kojic, there. And so she is, but see, because now Kojic ladies do wear stilettos.
They do.
Okay, so things have changed. So she's there, Tina, and she's got on her white Prada suit. She's got on the stilettos, and so she's coaching them on the runway. And so she's like telling them to work for the Lord and serve, serve like Jesus served, and she's like, and so one of the characters is like, Kojic women are so extra, so beautifully extra. So anyway, I just wanted to share that bit. But in terms of, the rule breaking, Mrs. Bernice and I were talking about this over lunch, and she was like, what is it with the church, with me in the church? And it was just so foundational for me growing up. I don't remember a time I wasn't sent to church. So my mother and my grandmother didn't go to church until I was in college. My mom became a churchgoer. And so I was always sent, and that was curious to me. And so I didn't really have a filter for what I was being taught in Sunday school or sermons. It was just coming at me, and kids are already black and white thinkers, and so much of church is dogma and black and white thinking. You're either going to heaven or hell. You're good or bad. So it was, you break the rule or you follow the rule. There was no nuance, no real shades of gray, and that was really challenging for me. One, as a child. Two, as a Virgo, because I need to get everything. You understand? I need to do things right, the right way. Everything has to be just so. And then as I'm getting older, and it's like, I don't know about these rules. All these women who were like, to me, they're the best dressed, they're having fun. It's too bad they're all going to hell. I just couldn't reconcile reconcile that, you know, as a kid. And then the fact that my mother and my grandmother who raised me, they didn't go to church. And I only asked my grandmother one time, like, well, how come y'all don't go to church? And she said, I'm going to go to church when I get myself together. And even at like 8 years old, I knew church was supposed to be a place where you got yourself together, but for whatever reason, she didn't feel welcome. And the way she said it, I knew not to ask again. So I didn't think about it in the way that, as someone was saying in the previous conversation here, we don't think of our parents, our mothers, as anything but our mothers, as not as people. I just sort of took that in stride and went on about my life. And then Church Ladies came out, and at this point in 2020, my mother and my grandmother have passed away, and people start asking me about church and my background, and I was like, oh yeah, I was sent to church, and realized that's strange. Like, what was that about? And I had to, for the first time, think, why was that? And I realized it was because both my mother and my grandmother were single mothers. And my grandfather, who had 2 children with my grandmother, his family, they were literally the pillars of the church. They were the brick masons that built St. Stephen's. AME, y'all know St. Stephen's?
Yep. Yes.
And they were also leaders within the church. So that's the first church I was sent to. Even though he had those kids, because my grandmother didn't have them by herself, he was still welcome at the church, but she wasn't. And then my mom had me when she was a teenager, and she wasn't welcome. So they weren't rejecting or challenging that, because with me, they sent me like, she can be salvaged, sort of thing.
Yes.
Which breaks my heart now,
Yes.
that they did not feel welcome. And that double standard where my grandfather was still welcome, and he was not taking care of his kids, but he could still be in the church.
Wow.
So that was sort of my origin story, and so I carried that with me into my adulthood. And being a good Virgo girl, I want to do everything right. I don't want to go to hell. So I did not have children before I was married. I married a man, heterosexually, and then I was still unhappy. And it's like, wait, I played by all the rules. I did all the things you're supposed to do right. And I'm supposed to have all this joy and all the things. And, so then now I'm questioning everything. And I'm thinking about the women that I grew up with. And I had always been thinking about this from the time I was little. How do they navigate these rules and these restrictions? And especially the ones that their own bodies and desires just, cry out against. How do they navigate that? And that was always my fascination. Did they masturbate? Did they have sex when they weren't married? When I was little, I used to wonder, because you can't ask people that. That's not my business. But that was the kind of little kid I was actually wondering about these things. And so when I started writing, when I was, late 20s, early 30s, because I didn't start writing until much later, it was those women whose stories and the nostalgia for growing up here and the memories of growing up here, those were the women that I wrote about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was something that you touched on about the church and how a lot of these women within the book, they still were human.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Daniel Black said last night at his keynote, he said something to the effect of, and it hit home for me, where he said, I go to church for the choir, I don't go for the word. And that hit something in reading about all of these women in this book. It kind of put things into perspective, because while each of them were going through something individually, they were all connected in a way, and in that connection, they were at church. Church was that connection. So that made me think, we as people, we as Black folk, I know we show up for the music, because 9 times out of 10, once the preacher started preaching, we sleep. So and looking at the characters, how they all went back to church to just be like, okay, I did all of these things. I did all these things Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, just like in Peaches.
Man. Wow.
Where Deacon was showing up. And
that was the pastor.
Pastor showing up. Pastor showing up at the house. He's showing up at the house, and it's the Peaches is there, and it's one of those things where it's just like, those secrets not only just impact the woman, it impacts the children,
Mhm.
it impacts other people within the church.
Yes.
The way all of these secrets are being held.
Mhm.
So going into that, I just want to talk about what Dr. Black said last night. I'm sorry, y'all. But going into that, peaches. I have questions about that peach cobbler.
Okay.
That story hit home for me, and it's not because it was something that personally happened to me or something that happened to my mom.
Mhm.
Recently, my mom found out that my grandfather, who I did grow up knowing as my grandfather, that was not her grandfather. And that was the big secret that everybody knew in Jacksonville. Everybody knew but my mom. So I felt in that story,
Mhm.
it kind of hit me in the chest, like, see how secrets impact everybody.
Yes.
So not only did it impact my mother, it now impacted all of her children.
All the family.
All of, and then now it's just like she's grappling with the fact of, do I make this known? And I'm just like, you still, that's all you knew before he passed away. But still, is
Yeah.
how secrets
Mhm.
and all of those connections within that book, because everybody was connected in some type of way
Yeah.
all throughout that book, and that was profound to me. So I was just like, okay, I see the link, but that link is also secrets.
Mhm.
Not only familiar families, it's not by relationships, it was the secrets that were all keeping them
Mhm.
together. Could you talk about that a bit with us, about how that was important? Because a lot of people go into this like, oh, this is gonna be juicy,
Mhm.
but it was also, no, this is a link, it's a spider web.
Yeah.
And it's all connected. All of these stories are connected in some type of way. These people are connected in some way, because we saw Carlotta again.
Right.
So it was one of those that
Yeah.
I would like to talk about that.
Thinking about the connections and sort of what you think you're getting into with these stories and then where it goes. One of my early readers was a guy named Caleb who lives in New Orleans. And you were talking about the accent earlier, Nikisha. And so I can't do the accent, but just imagine, babe. And so what he said was, he read the story and he was, the collection, and he was like, I thought I'm gonna get some erotica, and he was like, I heard from the ancestors. And so he saw those connections, which I think are ancestral, which is, so our women in particular, our mothers, our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, just think about the secrets that they held, even just the secrets in their bodies about what was done to them, and that you don't tell.
Yes.
And then you pass that on, and you pass that on, and you pass that on. And so that was just, I almost didn't know anybody growing up who didn't have something about, whether it was the paternity or who was had been abused or whatever, but the idea was, you don't talk about it. The general, we don't air our dirty laundry as Black people. But as I mentioned, I'm Gen X, and we are sort of that cusp.
Yes.
Before us, it's don't talk about it.
Yep.
After us, y'all tell everything. Everything. And Gen X, we're split. We're split. I was joking on Threads. I was like, Gen X is two groups of women: the ones that still wear slips and the ones that don't.
I mean, it don't.
And I think listen, I know correlation is not causation, but maybe the slip wearers are also the secret keepers still in Gen X. I don't know. I have not studied this. So I'm in that generation where I've heard all of the secrets. I've been told not to tell the secrets, but I also know that not telling the secrets kills us. It's killing us.
Yes.
And so that's part of it for the stories, is what happens. How do these women get free when they tell the secrets, but what does it also cost them?
Right.
Because it's not as simple as you just, tell your truth and then everything is fine. No, you tell your truth, and somebody's paying something as a result of that. And it might be you, and so that's, where the secrets come from. But within my own family, there is a lineage of secrets around violence and abuse. And after my oldest daughter was maybe 3, I started interviewing my grandmother, because I started feeling this sense of legacy and all of those things, and just trying to prompt her to tell me the stories she'd been telling me, my whole life. And then out of the blue, she just said, my grandpapa, not my grandpapa. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, I know. And just very matter of fact. And so there's a whole story there. Her mother, my great grandmother, it was a thing that she didn't know how to cook. And so she lived here in Jacksonville on Monroe, Monroe Street, off of Ashland, near Ashland.
Right over there.
And so we would cook Sunday dinner, and we would always take her dinner because she didn't cook. And again, as a kid, that's all I ever knew. So I didn't question it until I started writing about my grandmother and writing about her recently in a story. And I was like, she was born in allegedly 1906 because they said, she was 16. And I have always felt she was not 16. I always felt like she was 14. And I had a spiritual reading done recently, and I started telling this to the person because I really wanted to know more about her. And before I could say anything, I said, I don't think she was 16. They said, no, she was 14. Mm-hmm. And her, my grandmother's father was a grown man. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, so this woman born in 1908, let's say, who doesn't know how to cook, Black woman in the South, either there was no one to teach her, she didn't trust the person who could have taught her, or she was somewhere where they didn't teach, was she in a group, So even just that little thing about her not cooking, nobody ever talked about why that was. It was just understood that she didn't cook. So I'll never know those secrets. I don't think I'll ever be able to find out because she's gone. But they're just always there. They're just always there.
Yeah, I believe that for Black women in particular, we carry not only our own secrets, it's in our DNA.
Yes.
That we are carrying our ancestors' secrets as well. And it becomes heavy at a point. And I think with the new generation, and I can say with this new generation because I am Gen X, I'm the latter part, that don't wear slips. I can see it within my own daughters, where they're just like, no, I'm not keeping this on me. I can't. I would say for Gen X, the latter part of Gen X, we are the generational curse breakers. Where we taught our daughters to use their voices, and that's continuing to go on within our daughters, where they're just like, no, I'm not. And that's why we're seeing so many women now in their early 30s, late 20s saying, no, I don't really want to get married. Honestly, I'm okay with having a roster. And I'm okay with not having no babies.
Thank you.
And I tell people this all the time with my own daughter. So my son, he didn't listen. He ran off and went and had 2 babies, now he divorced. But my daughters was like, no, I don't want no babies. And I'm like, that's fine. If you don't want no babies, you ain't gotta have no babies. And it made me chuckle in the story where the woman was talking about, she gave the rules. I can't remember the name of it. Instructions for Christian men. That that story, I'm not even gonna say that story was wild because I understand. Yes, y'all see a ring on my finger, and I am married 10 years. However, I understand. Look, I understand. Yes, I understand.
Yes.
Tell me about that story.
So, you knew there was a story, right?
Yes.
So, you were noting that the 2 characters, the character that shows up twice is actually Olivia from Peach Cobbler.
Yes.
We see her as a child, and then we see her later in Instructions for Married Christian Husbands. Right. And I did not plan that. Instructions was the last story I wrote for the collection, but it's not last in the collection because it didn't feel like an ending. But it was the last one I wrote. And I had maybe, 6 months, a year before that, written like 20 pages of a traditional structured narrative about a woman who has affairs with married men constantly. And here's the latest man, here's how she met him and his family, here's the first time he's at her house, and then it just kind of died on the vine. And then, actually, I started writing that before I knew I was building a collection. So when it was time to finish up the collection, I needed one more story. And I was like, all right, it'll be this story. And I was bored. And that's the thing. If I'm bored, I'm not gonna give it to y'all because y'all are gonna be bored. Yeah. And so I couldn't figure out a way to get into the story that was interesting to me because I was like, affairs, you know, we've seen that. It's been done. I don't have anything new or interesting to say about it. But at the same time, I have a friend who, a social media friend who sent me, it was like a meme or a post on Facebook, and it said something like, I heart her husband.
Oh.
And so my friend and I were like, like, this is not how you do that. Like, do we need like a side chick academy to teach the girls, you know, the rules of engagement? That is just bold and wild, you know. So we keep being about that. And then the next day, some enterprising woman came up with a T-shirt that said, "But I have his 401k."
Oh yeah.
So again, we're kicking, but then I was like, but seriously though, what I don't like is that here we go again, pitting women against each other. Where's the man in that? Where's the man? I was going to say something really crude. Okay. He's getting what he wants, but we're pitting the women against each other, and we've made stereotypes of them. And even if you think about the mistress, the side chick, like she's marginalized, the man is centered, she's in the margin, the wife is being deceived. And I was like, so what if, and I do a lot of what if when I'm stuck on a story, what if I flipped it? And so if the woman who was on the margins, what if she was in the middle? And she's calling the shots. What if she was making the rules instead of him saying when she can call and when she, you know, all that? What if she made the rules for him? And I like to play with form, so it's like, what if it was an actual rule book? Suddenly, I'm interested in the story again because I like the character. Nothing was happening though. And so I kept, of those 20 pages, I kept the first paragraph that starts something like, you, the infantilized husband of godly Christian women, are low-hanging fruit or something like that. And then she's just talking about kind of why she does what she does. And then it sort of built out from there. And so that's how that story came to be. So when I was like, okay, what else would be an instruction manual? And I was like, oh, she should have like an about me section. So I had to think like, who is she? So I'm starting to describe her. And she says, I have my own bakery and I make the best peach cobbler in town. And I was like, it's Olivia.
Yes.
It's Olivia. And I think that what happened is in Peach Cobbler, Olivia at the end of the story is a teenager who is, her mother has made some horrible choices that impact Olivia, and she wants to leave, but she can't. She doesn't have anywhere to go. And I felt like that was the right ending for that story, but I think Olivia just stayed with me the way a teenage girl would if you didn't know what happened to her.
Yeah.
And then it's like she had to let me know, here I am. I'm doing what I said I wasn't gonna do, like my mom did, was sleep with married men, but I'm in control now. And so what I like about that story, which is what I like about most stories, is that it raises more questions than it answers. Like I don't wanna, you're talking about the church, I don't wanna replace one dogma for my dogma. And so I like it when I would be on book clubs and women would be arguing with each other about whether or not she was freer than her mother, or whether her life was better because she had some control, because she wasn't financially dependent on the men that she was sleeping with the way her mother was that better? And they would try and get me to answer, and I'm like, I ain't in it. I'm in it.
Right.
Y'all can decide. I think it can be read multiple ways. It depends on what is happiness? What is, how important is control to you?
Yeah, I believe happiness looks different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For her mother, it was, I gotta pay the bills.
Right.
Where for Olivia, it was, I have to be in control because I was never in control.
Yeah, exactly.
As a child.
Exactly.
So I have to hold on to that control and show I can do this and I don't need nobody else to help me do this,
Yes.
and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I know we talked about the new book coming out, and you told me that it'll probably be finished while you're here.
Yes.
Hold on now. Wait a minute. Go. We can go.
Okay. So So I have a fantastic editor, and the editing process is such that, you know, I sold a book as a partial manuscript, which is they say you can't do that. Don't listen when they say you can't do something. Somebody's done it. It's sold on a partial, so the first thing I had to do was finish the manuscript. So before I finished it, just on the partial, she gave me notes. I finished it in response to her notes, sent it to her. And so we've been doing this back and forth since the summer of 2023. And sometimes she takes longer than others. I'll say it that way. So I never know when I'm gonna get the notes back. And it never works out that when I'm just sitting around in between like trips or festivals or whatever, like here are the notes, and while I'm at home, you know, it rarely works out that way. So sure enough, I came here on Thursday. On Wednesday, she sent me the notes. The last round is going into production on Monday or Tuesday. So after the book signing, I'm gonna go back to my room and I'm gonna finish this book in Jacksonville, in my hometown, which means
full circle moment. I'm gonna go ahead and open up for questions so y'all can get to the book signing on time. Does anybody have any questions? I was gonna say, I know somebody got something to say.
What do you think the impact of this new wave of purity culture and like women taking themselves out of the game and celibacy has on how they try to experience but also subvert their own pleasure in response to maybe what they learned at church?
So I kind of think of it the way people talk about when your kids rebel and they say, you know, you as the parent, you just remain a constant and a safe place for them to come back to, because we see what happens with a lot of the church girls. What was that, Derek Jackson's wife with the bonnet? So just remember that everybody is on a journey just like you are, and those women, you know, hopefully they survive this period where they are denying themselves and subjecting themselves. Hopefully they survive intact, and hopefully they can come back to the community of those of us who are like, girl, be free. You know, that you be who you are. And so it really makes me sad, but it's like I also know that like you rarely can reach people where they are in that, when they're in it, when they're really deep in it, especially now that they've monetized that, you can't tell them anything at all. But the purity culture is rooted in secrecy and lies and self-deception and all of that. So I just sort of think of us as a sisterhood, and I mean, to the extent, not to say that we don't care about white women, but a lot of times we see them doing that. But in terms of black women doing it, I see us as a sisterhood that they can come back to.
Leave a light on for you.
We leave
We'll leave that on for you.
Yes.
So I'm always, this is kind of like a recycled question that I asked someone else, but I always feel that within our black community, the notion of as quiet as it kept has been very freaking harmful.
Yes.
And while reading your book, I felt like you were pushing against that. You're like,
Yes.
no, I'm gonna just lay it bare. It is what it is, and it will be what it will be. Tell us about your process of choosing to not fall underneath that trap of what happens in a home, stay in a home.
Yeah. I think it was easier for me to do that than perhaps some others, because the people I would be worried about, my mother and my grandmother, have passed. They passed away in 2005. And I started working on the earliest stories in church ladies in like 2014. And so, one, I'm not telling their secrets specifically, though if they were alive and read this book, they'd be like, wait a minute, that's my secrets, but you wouldn't, nobody knows what's theirs and all of that. So I never take a person and just tell their story like, you know, copy paste. And so I don't have the worry of what is so-and-so gonna say, because they aren't here. But also, it's because of them that I feel like I have to be completely candid, completely open. Losing my mother and my grandmother and my father actually all in the same year made me think a lot about mortality. But thinking specifically of my mother and my grandmother's lives, I can't even say they didn't fulfill their dreams. I don't know what they dreamt. They never ever said. I know that they took care of grown people that they should not have been taken care of. I know they worried a lot about what would people say, and they can't do this, and they had suffered a lot of violence and mistreatment as children, and it impacted them as adults. And so their lives were smaller than I think they might have otherwise been. And so what I realized after my mom in particular died was the way I honor her, the way I honor my grandmother, is to not do anything like this and small and closed and contained and worried and afraid and all of that, but to do it big and to do what I want to do. And they didn't get to do that. And whenever I would ask my mom, I don't know how I would frame the question, but she would always say things like, I was her greatest achievement. She would say that. And so if that's the case, then I got to do it for her. Everything I do is for them. I want to make them proud. I don't want to play small. I want to take all the opportunities that are available to me, that they felt like either they didn't have those opportunities or they didn't feel like they could do those things. The fears that they have, I don't have. If I did, it's because I choose to put those fears on myself, and I'm not going to do that.
Anybody else have any questions?
I had a quick comment that I wanted to share. So I am, you said you're Gen X,
Mhm.
I'm baby boomer.
Okay.
So and I think there's some baby boomers in the room. And I certainly agree. I have not read the book because my daughter said it was not going to be a book that I would want to read. I'm gonna put on the spot because I'm gonna read it now. You made a good point, and I want you to talk about it on her comment. You made a good point because what I'm hearing from her perspective, me being a baby boomer and she's at her gen whatever, she grew up. She grew up where church was in our lives, or in our lives, and so she see me as that person that you don't want to talk about maybe the different things that are going on, which I do. You know, I'm that open-minded baby boomer, so I get it. And this young lady stood up and talked about secrets, and you talk about secrets. From my perspective, I understand that there is a cost to pay when you tell it. Somebody's going to, it's going to be a good piece and a bad piece. But from my perspective, as a baby boomer, the secrets need to be told.
Yes.
And I'll tell you because whether it's painful or not, it is still something that we need to have as Black women to move and to grow.
Yes.
In my mind, the secrets that I know, you talked about carrying them on your shoulders.
Yes.
I carry these secrets, and I'm waiting for them to die, because I'm going to tell it.
Yes.
I'm going to tell it. I have a daughter who needs to know.
Yes.
That's what I want to say to these young, beautiful women. I have a child, I have 3 of them, that needs to know.
Yes.
And so when grandmama them wouldn't tell me, and I couldn't speak to it,
Yes.
that's ending with these beautiful people.
It is.
We need to tell it.
We do.
And I'm just gonna comment. You telling your mama she wouldn't be so.
Your mama need to read that
So I will say this, like I've been saying like the whole time before Church Ladies when I turned it in, production. It's I say all the time it's a book about Black women, sex, and the Black church. And then when I turned it in, literally hit send, I was like, wait, this is a book about mothers and daughters.
Yes.
It really is.
And I keep hearing from mothers and daughters who read the book together, or a daughter reads it and it's like, I got to give it to my mom because it's their way of saying, see, this is how you are, whatever. But no one in the book is demonized. There's a way to see the softness or the hope or the possibility, throughout in the stories, even if it's little small ways. So there's a story called How to Make Love to a Physicist.
Yes.
And this character is
sorry, I'm getting flashbacks to that. Oh my God.
yes. So her mother is like, when she's trying to heal some things and get at home with her body, so she goes to church and she does not have on her panty girdle. And her mom loses it because how you come and jiggling, in the house of the Lord. And so her mother says, don't don't come here like this again. And she says, fine. And she doesn't go to church anymore. But there's a thing at the end where she's an artist and she has an art show and she doesn't want to invite her mother and she's talking to her therapist about it. But at the very end, you find out her mother's there. Her mother's there. And that's just my little nod to say, never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never. Well, I really appreciate it. I just want to leave this with all of you as a Black woman. I want you to all, this is a room for Black women. We are magical.
Yes.
We are magic on this earth. And seeing everybody this weekend has just filled my heart with joy because I love us down. Down. You understand me? I love us down. And coming from a line of women who were not able to be loud about it. I can be loud about it. Have those conversations with your daughters, with your nieces, with your grandchildren, with your cousins. Break the generational curses so that way our girls can have those open conversations about their bodies, about their relationships, about their hurts, about their depression. Have those conversations, and that's why it was so important that Casey threw me in this one. I got voluntold.
I'm going to add to what you said. So when you have those conversations and you're empowering your daughters and they come and tell you they got a roster, don't freak out when you're talking to them. Have the healing conversation and then call your girlfriends and be like, what the fuck she got a roster?
Why she got a roster?
I'm just saying, we want to make sure we're not trying to make it sound like it's easy. It's not.
It's not. Yes. So I thank y'all for listen. All I got told was
I didn't want to know. I did not want to know. One of your nieces had a roster. I'll let you guess which one.
So
you know which one.
I want to thank y'all for coming. If you want to come up, take a photo,